and progressive policies, with the steadfast dedication to addressing the most urgent challenges of our time, demonstrating a definitive commitment toward renewable energy, environmental conservation, and sustainable development. The UAE stands as a testament to what can achieve when ambition and action are in line. The UAE's goal is to make COP28 fully inclusive and action-oriented, a COP that brings together developed and developing countries and unite all the stakeholders and sector, public, private, academic, and civil society, building consensus toward agreement on a tangible solution. As a COP of action and as a COP for all, we want COP28 to transform system and accelerate 2030 trajectories through game-changing partnership, solution, and outcome. Today, I will speak briefly about what is at stake at COP28 and why our actions are more critical than ever. Above all, it is for our planet's future. The central concern at COP28 is undoubtedly the future of our planet. Climate change continues to accelerate, bringing about increasingly frequent and severe impact, such as extreme weather events, rising sea level, and disruption of ecosystem. The decision we make during this conference will shape the trajectory of our planet for decades, if not centuries to come. A key goal for COP28 will be to reignite momentum on mitigation and accelerate the effort to slash emission by 43%. This requires concerted effort across all sectors, from all countries, business, and stakeholders. The COP28 presidency is targeting a tripling of renewable energy capacity by 2030 and doubling of energy efficiency improvement in the same period. Key highlight emitting areas will also be addressed, including land and food use system, the energy sector itself, and other high emitting industries such as cement and aluminum. As part of its push to support vulnerable countries and build resilience, COP28 will aim to a double financing for adaptation, reaching $40 billion annually, and will embrace a nature-based solution such as reforestation and ecosystem protection. COP28 also conclude the global goal on adaptation, and we are committed to working with parties to operationalize the fund for loss and damage. These two deliverables will drive enhanced support to affected countries. Additionally, COP28 will provide a platform where we can demonstrate that the thriving economy and environmental responsibility are not mutually exclusive. Clean energy, sustainable practice, and green technology hold the potential to drive innovation, to create jobs and propel economy into the future. We can and we must take this opportunity to put our economy on the path toward a new low carbon, high growth, sustainable economy development model. The stake at the COP28 are nothing short of our collective future, our well-being, and our shared destiny as we gather to negotiate, make commitment, and forge partnership. Let us bear in mind that the urgency of climate crisis require action now. The decision made in these conference halls have the power to reshape our world and leave lasting legacy for generations to come. My country, the United Arab Emirates, with its commitment to investing in renewable energy, advancing sustainable technology, and building resilience communities, had demonstrated what can be achieved if the will is there. The UAE should serve as a benchmark for meaningful conversation and action-oriented outcome. Thank you, and may COP28 be turning point in our collective journey toward a sustainable and prosperous world. Thank you. Kamsahamnida. Thank you.
Thank you, Nasser. Very clear, it is not an easy task. Many challenges between now and the successful conclusion of the COP. But thank you for setting out the road there and the ambitions of the presidency.
Thank you for your support and GGGI. And I think this is a responsibility, I said, not only for UAE, it's a global event where everybody should be involved, and especially the climate change action. I think everybody is responsible, and really even we are in a small world where we have to support each other. Some of the country, they cannot really, afford, or they cannot really do it by themselves. I think this is the COP is really a good platform to this country to have the opportunity to get the support and really to build a roadmap where we're going to go for the next generation in the future. As I said, we live in a small world. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have other voices who will give their perspectives to try and provide a bit more detail, both on what the needs are. That's, I think, particularly where we have invited the ambassador from the Philippines to give a perspective from your country. And then we have particular stakeholders following that give their perspective on the same issue. How do we get to a successful COP28? Ambassador Vega.
Thank you very much. I think I can operate it from here, right? Okay. So I'll just sit on the table also. So thank you again, Dr. Frank Rijbersman of GGGI, and a very inspiring opening message from His Excellency Ban Ki-moon and from Ambassador Al-Nini. And looking forward to hearing the panel later with Ambassador Jenny Kim, of course. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be in front of climate experts and committed policy makers this afternoon to discuss what indeed is at stake for COP28 in this timely panel leading to the next edition of the Conference of Parties. I hope to offer the audience a perspective on the impact of climate change coming from a very climate vulnerable country. The Philippines is a country which faces some of the highest disaster risk levels in the world, risks that are projected to intensify as the acceleration of climate change continues at an unprecedented level. Just to give you a snapshot, the Philippines, it's a beautiful archipelagic nation with a coastline that stretches more than 36,289 kilometers, one of the longest in the world, with a diverse marine ecosystem. A significant portion of the wealth of our nation is likewise sourced from the bounty of our seas. And with 50% of our 111 million population living in urban areas and many cities in coastal areas, the Philippines is extremely vulnerable to sea level rise, recording a rise of almost 3 times the global norm. Changes due to the variability and intensity of rainfall in our country and increased temperatures also affect our food security and the safety of our population. Problems the current administration continues to address by prioritizing projects for sustainable development, infrastructure, and of course, climate change. Multiple indices rank the Philippines as one of the countries, if not the country, most affected by extreme climate events. We rank first in the 2022 World Risk Index. Our country has experienced highly destructive typhoons almost annually for the past decade. Annual losses from typhoons have been estimated at 1.2% of our GDP. The loss is so critical that, in fact, our national development goals until 2040, our economists, our development policy experts, and technocrats all agree that climate change is a major threat to achieving our long-term development goals. To start, allow me to give a glimpse of the loss and damage incurred over the past decade. The Philippines recorded loss and damage in the past decade amounts to US 12 billion. That's equivalent to 2 times our national budget for much needed healthcare services. For a developing country like the Philippines, this is very impactful. And from a wider perspective, we belong to a climate vulnerable region, as 4 countries in the Southeast Asian region are among the 10 most vulnerable countries against the impacts of climate change and disasters. The Philippines, joined by Myanmar, Vietnam, and Thailand. This makes nearly 50% of the ASEAN population exposed to climate change impact. This is a 150% increase from the 222 million people of ASEAN heavily affected by climate and other disasters from 2009 to 2020. I would like to note further that ASEAN incurred significant economic and human losses and damages of US 97.3 billion. Clearly, we are dealing with numbers far beyond what is adequate and equitable, not just as a nation, but as a regional member of the 5th largest economy in the world. And the numbers manifest in no uncertain terms that in the face of worsening climate change, our lives, our livelihoods, and our collective future is at stake. And when the stakes are this high, how do we better the odds? So towards COP28 in Dubai and even beyond, we should come nearer to the outcomes we all desperately need. All our decisions and actions must rightly reflect and respect the principles of common but differentiated responsibilities, respective capabilities, and equity in light of the best available science and unique national circumstances. These numbers, after all, also represent the estimated capacity of our action to lend credence to the outcome of these very important climate negotiations. What is being done now? For its part, the Philippines has sought to put climate change at the forefront of its national agenda. Addressing the impact of climate change is among the top priorities of the administration of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. For 2023 alone, we have allocated US 8.2 billion or 9% of our national budget for climate change adaptation and mitigation programs towards meeting our unconditional NDC targets. Accelerating climate action and enhancing climate resilience have been more firmly embedded in our development agenda, which we project will lead to more flow of resources, including means of implementation. Despite adaptation mitigation efforts already underway, we remain at risk every day from loss and damage. However, mitigation and adaptation efforts through policy actions and investments, primarily to protect valuable infrastructure from typhoons and to make agriculture more resilient through climate-smart measures, give us hope that negative climate impacts can be reduced. This is why we continue to look to partners like the GGGI for climate assistance as we address key priorities, including strong environmental, social, and economic safeguards in key development programs. Allow me likewise to take this opportunity to thank the GGGI for its consistent support for the Philippine government in our transition towards a climate resilient and inclusive green growth through numerous green growth projects under the thematic areas of sustainable energy, sustainable agriculture, and green growth. In July this year, we strengthened the partnership between GGGI and the Philippines Department of Environment and Natural Resources through an MOU in addressing key priorities for environment and natural resources management. We have high hopes for the MOU, banking on GGGI's technical expertise in sustainable economic planning and development, policy advisory, as well as the mobilization of finance and investment, which can support the ambitious efforts in accelerating action towards low carbon development, the circular economy, biodiversity conservation, and climate resilience. We likewise have very high hopes for COP28 under the leadership of the UAE. We have heard His Excellency Sultan Ahmed Al Jaber and his very strong commitment, and look forward to fast-tracking the just, equitable, and orderly energy transition and slashing emissions before 2030, transforming climate finance by delivering on old promises and setting the framework, putting nature, people, and lives and livelihood at the heart of climate action. Allow me also to congratulate Ambassador Al-Naoumi and his team for organizing some very recently a very informative Road to COP28 briefing for members of the diplomatic corps and other stakeholders. We found it to be very, very informative and useful. Our people must be at the center of climate change plans, policies, and actions. Therefore, there is the need for inclusive, meaningful participation of all. Climate action must bring everyone together: civil society, indigenous peoples, local communities, women and girls, youth, migrant communities, the differently abled, the business sector, and other stakeholders. Calling for climate justice and climate action takes courage. We are, after all, calling for action against the most consequential threat in our lifetime. For our part, the Philippines will continue to assert and safeguard the country's interest in climate change negotiation, ensuring that we receive the appropriate support and assistance as a country vulnerable to climate change. At COP27, we called for bolder climate action and demanded the delivery of what is due for the developing countries, which hardly produce any GHG emissions, yet suffer the most and continue to bear the brunt of the adverse impacts of climate change. As developing countries need resources for climate adaptation, we will continue to call on developed countries to step up to these obligations and deliver without delay on their commitments on climate finance, technology transfer, and capacity building. The concept of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities remains relevant for us. We will continue to urge for action across prior agreements through all areas of climate change, with a focus on protecting people from the immediate impact of climate change, ensuring no one is left behind in the coming COP. And some of these actions are as follows. On global stocktaking, the GST outcomes must be comprehensive, inclusive, and transparent. While the outcomes may not be necessarily prescriptive, they must be able to guide the work of parties towards transformative, innovative, and sustainable climate actions. On adaptation, we hope for a successful conclusion of the adopted framework on the global goal on adaptation. On mitigation, the work on mitigation and enabling just transition must be ramped up. COP28 must put forward measures that will accelerate next steps in the risk management approach, taking into account the best available science, including the reports of the IPCC, to meet the objectives of the Convention and the Paris Agreement in limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Furthermore, the Philippines remains active in encouraging parties to have constructive discussions on the consideration of emissions avoidance as a mitigation measure under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. There also must be significant progress in the call for urgent operationalization of support for climate-related loss and damage. This includes a decision on the hosting of the Santiago Network for Loss and Damage and the establishment of Loss and Damage Fund and funding arrangements as agreed in COP27. The work on averting, minimizing, and addressing climate-related loss and damages cannot be further delayed as at-risk, vulnerable countries continue to suffer the brunt of climate change. For this, we further underscore that an equal focus, if not more, must be part of the mobilization and delivery of the means of implementation to fully implement adaptation and mitigation actions. Finally, we believe that creating a national enabling environment is paramount to ensure effective means of implementation for agreements made in COP28. Following the GST outcomes and parallel work on adaptation and mitigation, we look forward to COP28 providing a clearer and feasible strategy on the urgent mobilization and delivery of obligations on the means of implementation, and we also support in climate finance, technology development and transfer, and capacity building. This is a decision point close to us developing countries. We cannot afford delays in implementing these needed actions, and we cannot further delay our work on averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage. As we set the stage for COP28, I hope that we do not forget that those who await our bold and decisive commitments to be transformed into concrete actions are, the future generation, our lives, our livelihood, and our collective future. President Marcos at COP27 called on representative nations to leave a lasting legacy for the future and shape a climate resilient future. And I reiterate that call today because in the end, what really is at stake are not the strong arguments and refined policies, but our people, our children, and our future. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Ambassador De Vega. And I think you could hear some of the positions that the Philippines will be sharing during the meetings. That sometimes I thought, I think we have landed very close to the negotiations now. We heard from President and Chair Ban Ki-moon how high the stakes are. We heard about, I think, the very good intentions of the COP presidency. We heard of some of the very strong expectations of some of the countries like your own, Ambassador De Vega. So maybe we can turn to some of the people who have been involved quite a bit in these negotiations, not least Madeleine Diouf. She is the UNFCCC LDC group chair from Senegal, a very important person. We hope that she'll get online enough to join this discussion. And then we also have a lady who's from Norway, Miss Maya Christine Jama, if I say that correctly. She will give me the better pronunciation of her name. Is she online, and could we start with her otherwise? She is a member of the Governing Council of the Sami Parliament. I may not pronounce that correctly either, but that's an indigenous group. If I use the right term in Norway, there you are. And indeed, we're keen to hear from you, how from your perspective you can share how the Sami people are impacted by climate change, what it means, and indeed then, of course, how you are engaged in climate action from your perspective. First, let me welcome you to this event. We're very keen to hear from you, and please share your perspective.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. I am Maya Christine Jama, and I'm a member of the Governing Council at the Sami Parliament in Norway. The Sami Parliament is, just to start with that, is an elected body for the Sami in Norway. We also have parliaments in Finland and Sweden, but the Sami people are indigenous people with the traditional territories within the national borders of Norway, Finland, Sweden, and Russia. And we, as Sami politicians, we strives to protect and strengthen our Sami culture, our language, and way of life. So the climate change and these consequences are a huge concern of us, and something that will threaten our way of life. And it is also the climate change and its related consequences are a serious concern, as I said, but also a threat to our well-being as humans, but also our nature and homeland. And we see that our home, Sapmi, will change over the next decades and in the future, since in the Arctic the climate change goes much faster than projected for other world regions, and our culture and our livelihoods and species are adapted to cold and to cold winters, but this will slowly adjust when seasons, weather, species, and geopolitical situations are changing due to climate change. And we must try to understand climate change and climate knowledge and directions and policy in the relation to the Sami culture and challenges and opportunities for our livelihood, society, and well-being. So I'm glad that we have now have a report about climate change in Sápmi, an overview and path forward, which has been a result from a collaboration with the Sami Parliament in Norway and the Sami Council. Because our livelihoods are closely related to nature. It is based on control of and easy access to natural resource and self-employment of local food. This could be reindeer husbandry, fishing, small-scale farming, and harvesting. And this is not only a business praxis, but it's also important cornerstones for Sami culture, languages, and traditions. But we see that, and sadly, that our Sami way of life is facing a double climate burden. The cumulative effects of new land use and climate change have already increased vulnerability and reduced to addictive capacity of way of living to the extent that its long-term sustainability is threatened. So maintaining and improving the solution space to adapt is crucial for reducing existing impacts and risks of climate and land use change. So I think that so-called green solutions often feels like a new colonization in many indigenous people's lands. Since this new land grabbing is called a green solution and a part of the green transit. So it's a lot of concerns, of course, and to see that this also threaten our future. But the Sami people are engaged in climate action in many different ways. We have people like me as Sami politicians that must try to find political solutions to the world's most urgent challenges, that is climate change, which also is violating human rights across planet today. But unfortunately, I'm not able to do binding decisions in that matter. So I try to, and my job is to influence decision makers to do the right thing, try to do the right thing for sure, and to both stop climate change and benefit the Sami culture instead of doing more harm to us. And we have some tools that are the consultation law that we have with the Norwegian authorities. And on the other hand, we see that many of our people, and especially the Sami youth, stand up for both the climate and the nature and act as environmental human rights defenders. And perhaps as you have seen and noticed that in Norway, earlier this month, there has been a large group of human rights defenders together with the environmentalists that has been protesting in the capital of Oslo, the capital in Norway, since it has gone over 700 days since the Supreme Court judgment in the Fosen case. And the the Norwegian government, as we speak, are allowing an ongoing human rights violation. So the protests was about that the government should respect the Supreme Court and take immediately measures to reparation, because this Fosen case has where the constructions with the wind turbines at Fosen Peninsula, it is a violation of the Sami reindeer herders' right to enjoy the culture under Article 27 of Indigenous Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And a Grand Chamber of the Supreme Court found a violation, ruled the license and expropriation decisions invalid. So this is an example of how wrong it can go when there are land grabbing and without the indigenous people's free, prior, and informed consent are reached from the Sami reindeer herders, but also from their representative institution, the Sami Parliament. So this case shows a paradox in Norway, that we are addressing and respecting human rights, but including the rights of indigenous peoples worldwide, but at our home and in our homelands, there are an ongoing human rights violation of the Sami reindeer herders at Fosen. So you see that we experience climate change, but also we are affected by the measures that our homelands and the very foundation of our livelihood is threatened. But my point is that we can't resolve the climate crisis or the nature crisis by destroying more nature. We must do the opposite. And we need healthy biodiversity and ecosystems that provide us food from a non-toxic environment. And I think that the world can learn more from indigenous people's values when it comes to sustainable production and consumption, and how we live together with the Mother Earth and not off it. So we are engaged in preparations for a COP, and we are also involved in the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on climate change. So we try to use this important voice to highlight our positions, and also we work with our government to include more indigenous perspectives in their work. So, but I hope and expect a lot of this COP, and it's very important that that the environment and social safeguard provisions must fulfill the obligation to ensure the rights of indigenous peoples, and this concept of prior and informed consent, and that we must be involved in all decisions making that are affecting our lives and future. So thank you.
Oh, I didn't push my button for the microphone, so you couldn't hear me, maybe. I was trying to say thank you for sharing those perspectives from how you are affected by climate change, but then also by the solutions that the Norwegian government is putting in place, where indeed the Supreme Court ruled that the wind turbine park was affecting the human rights of the Sama population. Then I was saying indeed the Norwegian government is promising a very inclusive COP where all perspectives will be heard, including those of your people, and I think there will be many others represented like that. That makes, of course, the negotiations extremely complex, but let's still hope that these high expectations that we have can be realized. Thank you for your contribution. I'm going to see if now Madeleine Diouf is online. She is not yet online. So in that case, Jenny, Ambassador Kim, are you ready to share your perspective as a negotiator? What does Korea consider to be the key sticky points, the key difficulties to reach these very high expectations that we all have for COP28? Please, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank Global Green Growth Institute for organizing this very meaningful session. Actually, the pre-COP meeting, the pre-ministerial level consultation in preparation for COP28 will take place just Monday and Tuesday next week. So in that sense, I think this session is very, very timely. And also Ambassador from UAE and Ambassador from Philippines, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. And actually, the President-designate, Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, and UAE presidency, they already started very high-level, inclusive, informal discussion on key issues because the President-designate, he already invited key so-called star ministers in climate change negotiations to take part, to play a facilitator role in very sticky points. So several ministers, they already started informal discussion by Zoom, and they are checking what are the so-called lead lines, what will be the landing zone of the negotiation in difficult negotiation items. Having said that, I would like to say, if I just to pick up the most important words in the COP28 in Dubai this year, I will pick up global stocktake and loss and damage. So these two issues will be highlighted and will receive a lot of attention from all over the world. So what outcomes we are going to produce in global stocktake agenda item and loss and damage financial arrangement will judge the level of success of COP28. So the progress is going, it's moving, we are moving forward because we have a synthesis report regarding the elements to be considered by UNFCCC members in the outcome document of global stocktake. So if we look at that document, actually global stocktake is not only about mitigation, it is very inclusive one. It is covering mitigation, adaptation, and means of implementation and partnership as well. Therefore, not only in mitigation, but also in other areas, we have to produce same level of ambitions. We have to maintain the same level of ambitions. All countries agree that our global stocktake exercise must be based on science, best available science. Therefore, in that sense, Korea strongly believes that the key messages of IPCC sixth assessment report must be incorporated in the global stocktake outcome. So the key numbers suggested by IPCC, such as like 43% reduction by 2030 collectively from the level of 2019, and also peaking emission by 2025, and then decreasing globally. those numbers must be mentioned, I think. And also UAE presidency repeatedly emphasized the importance of technology development, technology collaboration, and they already receiving a lot of support regarding their suggestion about like triple renewable energy by 2030, doubling energy efficiency, and doubling clean hydrogen by the year of 2030. All those things, suggestions, we are strongly support, because Korea in a position to support stronger collaboration in technology development and technology transfer. Of course, technology is not a silver bullet, but we believe that many solutions we can find in technology development and technology collaboration. Having said that, the country of Korea, when you look at, although Korean government is making a lot of efforts to increase its renewable energy portion in energy mix, still we have many challenges. And we do believe that we needed to consider other clean energies as options as well. Therefore, in that sense, actually, the Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol at the UNGA General Assembly in September, he announced that Korea is going to lead carbon-free energy alliance. So this carbon-free energy alliance is an open platform to promote carbon-free energy, including renewables, nuclear, clean hydrogen, and CCUS technology as well. So for sharing information, for encouraging private sector to invest more in carbon-free energy sector, and to develop so-called global standard regarding carbon-free energy. So we will work hard to promote this carbon-free energy alliance. And then this is going to be an open platform inviting not only governments, but also private sectors and international organizations, research institute as well. Korean companies like Samsung and Hyundai Motors, they already expressed their support to join this alliance. Therefore, at COP28, we are going to make a showcase event regarding this carbon-free energy alliance. And regarding loss and damage fund, we have options the negotiators, we have options in front of us, and the transitional committee, they are discussing a lot whether we are going to try establish a separate fund, or we are going to invite existing organization to host the fund, loss and damage fund, under what condition, and what will be the eligibility of the receiving countries. All those details we are currently discussing quite intensively, and I hope we are going to produce good agreement at COP28. If I just mention Korea's position, taking into account the urgency of loss and damage financial arrangement, this is the most urgent to disperse the money to the most vulnerable countries regarding climate crisis. Therefore, we believe utilizing existing organization can be easier to operationalize the loss and damage fund. And also in that sense, we believe Green Climate Fund can be a good option, because that's the biggest, the international fund targeting developing countries' climate action. And also because the organization, the Green Climate Fund, because they have expertise to provide the support to the developing countries. I think we have only 3 minutes until 6 o'clock, so I think I must stop here. Yeah. Thank you.
Indeed, Did Madeleine show up? Okay, now, blessing in disguise, because our time is up in any case. So that leaves me 2 or 3 minutes to sum up. I think we were lucky that we had such positive people on the panel, because of course we all read the newspapers, right? We can read about the bottlenecks. We can read about people that are worried that, you know, the global stocktake, we here said what must be achieved. But of course, so far, the global stocktake is a failing report card on action to date, right? Emissions are not going down, they're going up. So reducing by 43% by 2030, it must happen, but it is exceedingly difficult, right? So that is one very, very difficult file. And yes, loss and damage. It was good to hear Korea supporting the Green Climate Fund as a possible existing mechanism to administer the fund. We know that the World Bank has been put forward by some really large countries, and that least developed countries, had Madeleine been online, their position is that it should not be with that particularly large organization, the World Bank, that has been put forward by the US particularly. So there are some really complicated hot potatoes for the negotiators, including you, Jenny. I think you will have another period in COP where there is very little sleep, where people are asked to work overtime. But I think from our perspective as an audience here, it was very helpful to hear from you, Ambassador El-Noaimi, what the presidency is hoping to achieve. It was very helpful to get the perspective both from the Philippines and from a Sami politician of what the expectations are. And I think, Jenny, that you gave some insight into the difficult work of negotiators, what you're looking at in the weeks and months to come was very helpful. So I would like to thank all of you for your contributions, and we managed to conclude exactly on time then. So thank you very much.